And on his way down here to the basement, my new friend, actually a guy that I've known forever because one of his games is my favorite game, Mr. Jamey Stegmaier is here. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for inviting me down to the basement today. I'm happy to talk with you.
And the basement's the perfect place for board game night, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. And this table's seen some board games, my friend. We haven't flipped a table yet, but we're not that kind of board game people. And I get the feeling watching your YouTube videos. And by the way, we'll link to everything we talk about. We're going to talk about a lot of links. We're going to link to everything we talk about with Jamey on our show notes page at stackingbenjamins.com. But just based on your awesome YouTube videos, Jamey, that I've seen, you're not that type of player either. I mean, it sounds like you guys have a lot of fun. You kind of play hard, but then laugh about it.
Yeah, I like to, I host a weekly game night and I go to other people's game nights. And when I play a game, I want to make sure that everyone's having a good time, including myself, but especially the other people at the table.
I often find that when people are brand new to board games, they're all super competitive. And then they realize that as a group of people, I can't speak for all board gamers, but I feel like most board gamers I play with were like, oh, okay, that was 4 minutes ago. I don't even remember who won.
Right. Yeah. Ultimately it's cardboard, it's wood, it's plastic. You can have fun with it and then put it away and forget those things that happen during the game. Yeah.
You've made this transition from where I sit, a guy that also has board game night with my friends about once a week, to being in the industry. Tell me about what propelled you from being a board game fan to creating and being behind some awesome games like Viticulture, Scythe, and really the big one, which I also want to talk about, Wingspan.
Yeah. Well, my company, Stonemaier Games, didn't exist 10 years ago, but Kickstarter became a thing around, I think 2009, I think was when it started to take off a little bit. And I started to see 2009, 2010, I started to see board game projects on Kickstarter. And I was fascinated by Kickstarter. And I was also a hobby gamer at that point. I designed some games just for fun. And I thought, seems like a really, really neat platform to try to launch and create a passion project, in this case, a game. And so for the first couple of years of the company, we started with one game, and then we launched a few more, got up to a really big one with Scythe. And then after that, I decided, I love this platform. I want to take all the things I've learned from it, and I just want to run a company now. And so I've kind of focused on not using Kickstarter, but still trying to bring games and bring joy to tabletops worldwide without that platform.
This is something I didn't think that I'd ask you about, but a lot of people are looking for this change in their life, right? That they want the financial security to be able to move from a full-time job that they maybe don't love into something that they're much more passionate about. Were you working someplace else and then had to make that decision that you were going to kind of jump off into board game land?
I had a good, secure full-time job that I was pretty happy with at the time. And so I started the company. I designed the game. I ran this original Kickstarter while I still had this other full-time job. And then over the many months with that game and then our next game, Euphoria, essentially I ended up having two full-time jobs, which was not the intention there. And so I asked my boss at the other job if I could go part-time. And so I worked part-time at that job. I kind of kept that security for a little while longer.
Nice. Yeah.
And then eventually around 6 months later, I ended up going full-time for my company. That was in 2013. And I left that job behind. Yeah.
But I love that idea of, you're bootstrapping it, but keeping some security while you're doing it. But I can't imagine that period of time when it's a full-time job with Stonemaier and it's a full-time job at the full-time job. That's got to be hectic. And I think, I think you have a family also.
At the time, I have a girlfriend now, but that was my focus. I was really, really just focused on that one job and then the other job at the same time. Yeah.
And I also think, and this is a little bit personal, so tell me how far you want to go with this, but but health insurance, everybody worries about, you go on your own, Jamey, at your age, health insurance. How did you navigate that?
Yeah, I'm 40 now. So I was around 33, and I bought a solo health insurance plan. I can't remember what the laws were back then, but that was definitely a major concern. And so I kind of, at that point, when I decided to make the transition to working full time, I had saved up enough money that if things went terribly wrong after a year, I had enough money to last a year, basically. If things went terribly wrong, I said to myself, I'll give this a try for a year, and after a year, I will do something else. I'll find a real job again if I need to. But it worked out. That year worked out, and the next year was a little bit better, and so on. So I had a little bit of a cushion there
Yes.
in preparation for that step.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think it's good. It's a good, and I know you didn't mean it as advice for other people, but that is great advice for people. Make sure you got that cushion so you're able to do that.
Yes.
I want to talk just a little bit more about the company before we dive into my favorite part and your favorite part, probably talking just about games. But later on the company, early on, you're designing games. And the games are selling well. You can feel the love, by the way. I'm going to brag about you a little bit, Jamey, as a fan of your games. Your games, you can really feel the love of the games because they're definitely not the cheapest games out there. They're made with a bunch of love, which means they're going to be a little more expensive. But because of that, the games look beautiful. The rules play beautiful. And man, it just feels like there's a different game for anybody. But I won't want to ask you about that. I want to ask you about the second part of your company, when now you are a publisher and you're working with other designers. Tell me about meeting this woman who has this idea for a game about birds that now has taken the world by, and by the way, and a lot of people still out there do not know about this game, but this game has taken the world by storm, a game called Wingspan. Tell me how that relationship began and how that kind of flourished.
Yeah. Well, I'll flash forward a little bit, and I'll give people a little bit of context for how big the game is, because it's unusual in the hobby game market for a $60 game to sell over 1 million copies.
Yeah.
In just over 2 years now, maybe even just under 2 years, or just over 2 years. Yeah. Which is incredible. It's amazing that it's done those types of numbers. But it started back at a convention called Gen Con that I'm guessing you're familiar with, and that some of your listeners might have heard. It's a big gaming convention in Indianapolis. And Elizabeth reached out to me before the convention and said, I'm working on this game. I'd like to show it to you to see if you'd be interested in publishing it. At the time, it was called Bring in the Birds. And so I spent basically just a half hour with Elizabeth, just playing through the game and talking to her about it, kind of testing her a little bit with how she could take constructive feedback, which I do for all the designers who submit games to us.
Why do you do that, by the way?
Well, when someone designs a game, it's really just the first step of a process. When they design a game and submit it to us, it's the first step of us really turning what they've started to make into something that is really, really great, hopefully. And so I need to make sure that that the designers are people that are willing to work with me and willing to say yes to some of my feedback and say no to some of my feedback. I want both of it. I don't want them to just say yes to everything, because they're going to be right sometimes, and I'm probably going to be right sometimes too.
So you're previewing the partnership.
I'm previewing. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Exactly.
Okay.
And we're also previewing the game. And so in this case, I was amazed by how well Elizabeth married the theme of each individual bird that she had selected with the mechanisms that she applied to those bird cards, which is not an easy thing to do, to design 100 different cards that each feel unique and thematic. I was just enamored from day one. Even though the game changed a lot after that, from the way that she ended up fully designing it, the way I helped develop it. But from day one, I was like, this is something special. I want to be a part of this.
She seems like, just the interviews I've seen with her, Elizabeth just seems like somebody that would be a great partner to work with.
She's incredible. Yeah, I really don't have many expectations from designers from a kind of a marketing standpoint. That's my job. But Elizabeth is an amazing advocate for many things, including Wingspan. So it's been great to see her do all these interviews and chats with people, which that's not her job, but she does a wonderful job with them.
We played, for everybody listening, we played Wingspan with many friends of ours that don't play a lot of board games. And because the theme is so different than what they expect, and it really, even though as we explain the game, it seems like it might be a little bit of a rough go for somebody, it ends up being fairly intuitive and really fun. And to your point, like if you've got geese, it feels like I've got geese on the board versus these little birds that kind of flit around everywhere. It feels like I've got these different types of birds with these characteristics. I can't tell you the number of times people have left and texted me later going, what's the name of that game? Because I want to buy it. So it's so awesome. Great. Yeah. Okay. So we talked about you, we talked about the company a little bit. Let's talk about board games.
Yeah.
And you were nice enough to make us 2 lists of games. The first list is a list of games that maybe don't teach people about money, but they're an introduction into economic engines, into money topics, just starts the conversation going, where it makes people a little bit more excited about this financial stuff going on. How much do you like those economic games and economic engine games?
I enjoy quite a few of them. Yeah, I would say they're up there in maybe my top five, top six genres of games. Mostly because I like
Top five out of five.
top five out of five. Yeah, I I like the low stakes nature of board games in general, but I like when you get to have this element of creative problem solving involving something that's very tangible, money, which we deal with every day in real life. But in board games where there's no real stakes there, you walk
Yeah.
away after an hour and you haven't actually lost $1 million.
Yeah.
But in the game, you can put that at risk.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I enjoyed that a lot.
All right, let's dive into them. Are we gonna do these David Letterman style? Maybe 5, 4, 3, 2, 1?
Sure.
All
Yeah.
right, your number 5 games about money.
So I to indulge myself a little bit for each of these lists. At number 5, I put a Stonemaier game on the list. So I put Viticulture at number 5. This is a game, a Stonemaier game. This is the first game that I designed, and it's about running a vineyard. And there's a very strong sense of order of operations to it, and it's tied to the money that you're earning throughout the game. Where if you want to grow a certain type of grape, you need to have a certain type of trellis so that you can grow that grape, and then you need to harvest the grapes from that vine, turn those grapes into wine, and then find the right wine order to sell that wine. And so there's these. It's a very economic game. I wouldn't say it's particularly money driven as the other games on my list are, but it does have this strong economic sense to it.
Very much, and I will. I have 3 games that I call my favorite game, and Viticulture is one of my 3 favorite games. I would rather play Viticulture than anything else, but a game called Acquire, which could have probably been on your list, I would imagine, and then a third game called Big City I really like. But yeah, those 3, depending on the number of Big City with 3 players. But anyway, Viticulture, that's an amazing one. And you know what I love about it, Jamey? Just one more little thing. I love the feeling like I feel like I'm running this operation. So we talked about you in board games. You really truly feel like I'm running this fledgling, trying to get off the ground operation.
Yeah, I really wanted to aim for that. That you have your own little vineyard that's yours, that you can cultivate it however you want, and see it grow over the course of the game.
Number 4 on your list.
Number 4 is the biggest box game I have here today, and that is Glenmoore Chronicles. This is a big game, and it has a very specific economic engine that I've seen in a few different games, but I wanted to mention it because it's a really neat little thing in the game where if you have certain resources, if you have whiskey in the game and you need some money, the whiskey that you add to the market, the timing of when you add that whiskey to the market determines how much money you get based on if other players have or have not sold whiskey to the market, and vice versa too. If you need some whiskey, you can pay for it, but the cost depends on whether or not, kind of supply and demand, if other players have recently sold or bought whiskey from that market. And I love little market mechanisms like that in board games.
This is a game, by the way, and I'm 99% sure that I played this game. This was just reprinted, right?
It was. Yeah.
Yes. So I have played this game, and you're right. Deciding when to buy and sell, almost like this real estate market we're in right now, where you're getting these eye-popping numbers. People are asking us all the time, do I sell my stuff now or do I wait? You have the same delicious decision in this game.
Yeah. There are a few games like that on my list that are kind of these closed economies, and I really like that in Glenmoore too.
That's fantastic. Number 3 on your list.
Number 3 is the smallest, lightest, and shortest game on the list, and that is For Sale. I'm sure you're familiar with For Sale, yeah?
This is a super light game, and it's really nice for people that have never played board games. I think it's a nice introduction, Jamey.
It is, yeah. It's very easy to teach and play. And you mentioned real estate a second ago. This is a game about acquiring properties in the first half of the game, the first 10 minutes. And then in the second half, you're trying to sell those properties at the highest value. And it's an auction game. It's a unique auction where you're basically bidding to try to stay in the auction as long as possible, and on some cards, some properties that are on the display. And it's a really, really tight game. The money is tight. You're trying to get the right cards at the right time. You played it. What do you love about For Sale?
You know, I love the fact that it is quick, number one, and that it feels very light. I actually love the artwork, and I think there's a sense of humor to it. I believe that isn't there like an outhouse or a tent like on the bottom side, and it goes up to these huge mansions and big buildings?
It does, yeah. The properties are from 1 to 30. The one, I think, is a cardboard box, or maybe even a sewer drain, and number 30 is like a palace in the sky. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fun. And then, man, when you turn it on its head halfway through the game, and then you're trying to unload all those properties, I don't know. I like the fact that your brain kind of switches halfway through.
Yeah. Me
Yeah,
too.
good
Me
stuff.
too.
Number two,
Number two, I have another game similar to Glenmoore that's set in Scotland, and that is Isle of Skye.
I have never played this game. Tell us about
Never
it.
played this one. This is, at its heart, it's a tile placement game. But the thing I love about it in terms of the economy of it, the money side of it, is that it is an I price you choose game. So every turn in the game, each player is secretly going to have 3 tiles in front of them, and they're going to secretly price each of those tiles. So I might say, okay, I think this tile is worth $1. I think this tile is worth $3, and then you'll reveal those prices, and the other players have the opportunity of buying those tiles from you at that price that you set for those tiles. And for any tiles they don't buy, you have to pay those tiles at the price that you set. So you don't really want to price anything too high because you might be stuck paying that cost at the end of the round. But if you price it too low, then you're giving players these tiles for really cheap. I love I Price You Choose, and Isle of Skye does it really, really well.
I could imagine some of my friends with a game like that there might be a little bit of angst, and I can imagine myself having a little bit of paralysis. We have this thing in board gaming called analysis paralysis. Not too bad, but I could still think, I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that.
It happens a little bit in this game. I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that in a few games, especially the first time you play. You're like, I really don't know how much this tile is worth. But as the game continues, you get a rough idea of that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it's a beautiful game too. I love the art on all these games, the attention to art. How do you guys, I've never had a board game designer on. We've had a lot of board game luminaries on, but never a board game designer. How do you pair a game with an artist that fits? Because I feel like half of the fun of all these games that you've mentioned, Jamey, are that the right artist kind of gives you the mood.
It's an interesting puzzle. I don't have a magical answer to it. It's just kind of a guess, almost a guess every time. I have a good feel of what artists are in the industry, what artists are. I look for certain types of art at times. And it just kind of, I have a rough vision for it, and I hope that we get it right. I wish there was a science to it, but there isn't.
But I really feel like you talked about For Sale, and the fact that that's kind of goofy, light art is fantastic. Where viticulture feels like this authentic Italian family, and we're in Tuscany. It's this whole different art scheme. All right, here we go. I don't know. I don't have a drum roll. I wish I had a drum roll. Jamey's number one game to introduce you to money topics would be.
That would be QE. Have you played QE?
I have never played this game. It seems so interesting. And I believe, and this is horrible to admit, because I've kickstarted quite a few things. I think it's coming. I think
the second printing.
That's coming. Yes. In the next few weeks, by the way. So.
Oh, awesome. Well, I look forward to hearing what you think about it, because it is a really, really unique game in that it's an auction game, but you can bid any amount of money on the things that you're trying to buy in this game. Like literally, the game has dry erase markers and little whiteboards, and you are writing any number that you want on those whiteboards.
What types of things are we trying to buy, by the way?
You're trying to buy, it says it's 2008 and the economy is crashing. You play as one of the largest nations in the world, and it's your job to save the economy by printing money to bail the companies. So you're buying different companies.
Right. And I love the fact that we're printing money. And our severe money geeks got a good laugh out of that too.
Exactly. Yeah, you're printing money. You're writing down any number you want. And the catch in the game is that at the end of the game, even if you've acquired all these points from these companies that you've acquired, if you spent more money than any other player, you can't win. You are not allowed to win the game. And so you could write down $1 billion on your very first auction, and someone else maybe bids $5. And so they've only attempted to spend $5. You spent $1 billion, and it actually completely changes the economy of the game from then on. Like, you may not have lost the game then because you've shifted the economy of the game. The next player who bid might say, okay, well, I can safely bid 500 million now because I'm not going to have spent the most this game. It's just really, really interesting to give that flexibility to players of bidding any amount.
Well, and I'm just imagining then, and I'm imagining this is probably why it was number one on your list. You're not just playing the game, you're playing the other players. Like, you're really playing the other players.
Absolutely. Yeah. Throughout every moment of the game, you're playing the other players. Yeah.
I can't wait. Yeah. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
You were kind enough to make a second list for us. And a lot of
Hmm.
people listen to the show, Jamey, different than you and I. They will go to the aisle at Target. They'll go to Amazon. They'll go to Board Game Geek. They'll go these different places and they will make a decision once a year on a board game to
Yeah.
play with the family. And you and I also know how many times that ends in a sad tragedy where they see some fantastic, speaking of artwork, they'll see some fantastic artwork and there's nothing under the hood. The game is absolutely awful. So let's save some people some money. If we're playing games in the holiday season and we're only buying one, you also made us a top 5 here of games you think would be great family games. What's your number 5?
When I picked 5 slightly different categories here to hopefully match
Awesome.
with everyone out there. So the
Cool.
first one, again, I picked a Stonemaier game. I picked our 2021 release, Red Rising.
I have not played this either, and I can't wait. And I'm hearing all kinds of fun stuff about it.
I love the game. I helped design it, but yeah, I hope you enjoy it too.
You're slightly biased, but is this
A little bit.
also it's based on a book, right? The theme is around a book.
It is, yeah. And so if someone hears about this from this podcast and doesn't want to play games, I would still recommend the book. It's the Red Rising trilogy. It's a dystopian sci-fi series that I think will someday probably end up being a TV show. The author hasn't told me exactly, but he's hinted at it. But I love the book series. I fell in love with it and have wanted to design a game in this world for quite some time. And so it's a great book game pairing. You can get it for $40 at Target or Amazon or our website. I have the collector's edition here. If you want like the fancy version, you can get that directly from us. But there's a very affordable version at Target or Amazon.
So then you found yourself then reaching out to the author and asking to license the game.
I did, yeah. It was a process of kind of building trust and showing that I really was a fan and also a capable publisher and designer. But it took some time, but it worked out. Yeah.
That's so funny. I didn't know any of that. That part's got to be really cool because, I mean, number one, you're working on board games, but then you're also there's other projects you love in a different arena, like a book, and you got to work with them.
Yeah. I love brands like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. Those are some of the big IPs, but this is right under those for me. I really, really love this series.
That's fabulous. And tell us a little bit about the mechanics. Why is this a good family game?
Yeah, it's very easy to set up and play. The whole idea of the game is that each player is given a random hand of 5 character cards. And over the course of the game, you are trying to craft that hand. So get rid of some characters, add other characters to your hand so that you have the best hand of characters that scores the most points at the end of the game. So that's the entire game. You're just kind of crafting this hand of cards, this hand of characters that hints at the theme of the world, doesn't spoil the books, but also is tied to the kind of the themes of the books as you play.
And it sounds like a good family game, very easy to explain.
Very easy to explain.
Yeah. Yes. Our next, I won't even call these top 5 because it sounds like these are going to be more of a kaleidoscope. But what's the next one? Yes.
Yeah, the next one, I wanted to put one on here for the pet lovers of the world. I don't know if you follow me on Instagram, but I always post photos of my cats. I love my cats. And so the game is The Isle of Cats.
I've never played this game either.
This is people are familiar with Tetris, I'm sure. In the gaming world, we call it polyominoes, but it's a Tetrisy game where you have these cats that are on these weird poses on tiles, and you're trying to fit them into these boats. There's more to the game than that, but that's kind of the jovial, fun nature of the game. You have these weirdly shaped cats, and you're trying to fit them perfectly onto your boats to cover up rats and to cover up different sections of the boats. And it's just, for the mechanical complexity of it, it is a little higher in complexity. It is also whimsical and fun and beautiful and delightful to play. It's
funny you talked about complexity. Just looking at it, it doesn't look like there would be complexity. What's the minimum age they have on that?
They put ages 8+ on here. So I guess that's indicating there isn't a lot of text in the game, which is true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isle of Cats.
Awesome. Isle of Cats. And that game is new to me. I have never seen that game. Our third one on the list.
Third one. So I wanted to pick a game for people who just want to play games with one other person, their partner, their spouse. Maybe they have one kid who's really into gaming. And so I picked a 2-player game, 7 Wonders Duel. Have you played 7 Wonders Duel?
I have played 7 Wonders Duel, but I've only done it on an online site called Board Game Arena. And I've played it there, and it's phenomenal. Well, Board Game Arena is nice because I don't have to set up all the cards and stuff.
Yeah, it definitely speeds up the game a bit. And that's a great place for people to try it if they want to see if it is a good game for them. But my girlfriend and I also just love getting out the real thing when we have the chance and dueling with 7 Wonders Duel. It's a game where in a slightly abstract way, you're kind of building a civilization, and there's just a lot of great mechanisms. There's a tug of war mechanism with military in the game. There are a couple different ways that you can instantly end the game. So people out there who love like Hearts has the shoot your moon aspect to it. There's that aspect in Seven Wonders Duel, and it's just I love the game. It's just a really satisfying game to play.
It is based on an award-winning game. Seven Wonders, I believe, won Game of the Year, the German Game of the Year award, I think. And the other thing that I like about Duel is that not just that tug of war, but it's also there's the card that I want to take, and there's the card that I don't want you to have.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of sometimes not picking the best card for me. I'm making sure I get rid of the best card for you, which I also really very much enjoy.
I love that part of it. Yeah.
And that's a small box too. I mean, that is not an expensive game.
It's a tiny box, and it is a dueling game, so it's head-to-head with someone else, but it's a dueling game where you really feel more like you're building your own thing and trying to make that thing better than the other player, rather than a lot of dueling games where you're maybe trying to attack them. There isn't a lot of attacking in this game.
And now we mentioned viticulture early. Great with Cheryl and I, my spouse and I, we play viticulture all the time with just two, and it's a great back and forth game with two people. Are there other games that are on this list so far that we've already gone over, Jamey, that you think are decent with two people? Because I know we have a fair number of people, a fair number of listeners that might only have two people a lot of the time.
Yeah, I Love Cats is delightful at 2. Viticulture, as you said, works at 2. Seven Wonders Duel does. I would not recommend QE, the whimsical auction game, at 2.
Yeah,
I don't even know if it's
more people, it would be much more fun.
Yeah, that plays at 3. I Love Sky technically plays at 2, but I don't usually play that at 2. For Sale, I wouldn't. Red Rising plays great at 2.
Red Rising.
Yeah, and Glenmoore plays well at 2 as well.
Yeah, and I learned Glenmoore with two people, and it was a lot of fun.
Yes.
Next on fourth already, I think, on our list.
Fourth, yeah. So the last 2 games on my list are cooperative. So they're this term. Some of your listeners may not be familiar. So there's lots of competitive games where you alone are trying to win. Cooperative games, you're trying to win together with the other players. And
by the way, while you're grabbing it, that makes games for people listening, it's so fun. It's so different because, when I was brought up on games, I was meant that I had to Jamey kick your butt. My goal was, and all of a sudden we're on the same team working together for this end goal. And you get this warm feeling around the table when you're all working together, and it's so fun.
I agree. That's why I think it's a good holiday picks for these last 2, that you do have that warm feeling of working together to hopefully try to win. And my pick at number 2 is Mysterium Park. This is a distilled, smaller, and cheaper, more affordable version of a now classic game called Mysterium, where one player represents a character who has died, and they are trying to give clues to the other players to help guide them, kind of in the style of the game Clue, but very different mechanically, like to tell them where they died and who committed the murder. And they're using these beautifully and almost eerily illustrated cards to do that. There's no communication. I'm not telling you, Joe, I look at the red on this card. I'm giving you a card and hoping that you notice the red on that card and that you connect it to something else on the table.
And half of the fun of the game, now I haven't played Mysterium Park, and it looks beautiful. And I'm imagining that the artwork, you said it's kind of eerie, but I think it's also probably really pretty, I would imagine.
It is, yeah.
The thing that drives me nuts is when I'm the ghost, like a ghost, you can't communicate, as you mentioned, except through these visions you're giving people. They always miss the damn thing on the card that I want them to see, and they always see the wrong stuff that I totally didn't think about. They're like, "Oh, it must be this thing," and you want to scream at them, "No!" And you can't. Which, by the way, this game, the fun thing about this game is whether you win or lose too. There's this great conversation that's for the next 30 to 40 minutes about all the communication that got missed and it's so fun. Yeah, Mysterium Park, that's great.
I played with my parents last year. I think it came out around Thanksgiving last year. And my dad told me the next day he couldn't fall asleep that night because he was thinking about how he wished he could have played a card slightly differently. He got really into it. And this version, you've played the original, it sounds like. There is a game called Mysterium.
Yes.
Which takes a while to set up. That's kind of the main knock on the game. This game is great to set up.
I think the appropriate word is it takes forever to set up.
It takes forever to set up. Yeah. This game is completely streamlined setup. Mysterium Park makes it much easier to get to the table, even at 2 players. You enjoy it at 2.
Oh, at 2 players you can play.
Even at 2. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. All right, Jamey. This is a super moment, sad moment for me because I love talking board games, but this is our last one. What do we got?
So this is a game that won a major German award the same year that Wingspan did, but very different type of game. It is Just One. It's the party game that I love. Like I'm not drawn to many party style games, but it's a fully cooperative party style game where you're trying to get a player each turn. You're trying to get a player to guess a certain word that they can't see, and you have to give them a one-word clue. You write down a one-word clue. But if your one-word clue is the same as anyone else's one-word clue, the person trying to guess the word doesn't get to see those clues. So if the word is pizza, if I'm trying to get you to, I'm describing this, I know you have no other plays, but so anyone listening, if I'm trying to get you to guess the word pizza and I write down Italian, but someone else writes down Italian, then they don't even get to see those clues. So I might go with something more eclectic, but still good enough to get that person to guess the clue. It's such a fun, funny game. It's genuinely a genuine laughter comes out of every time I play this game, and you get to feel clever, and you get that position of trying to guess and also giving the clues. What, have you played this one?
I have played this.
Yeah.
I've yet to play this with somebody that didn't love it.
Yeah.
That did think it was great. You generally get finished with it and they say, let's play again. And because of the fact it's fairly quick, Jamey, you can play it several times during the evening. And what I find really funny is when you and I try to make sure that we don't pick that obvious thing. So with pizza, we both don't want to put Italian and we don't want to put pepperoni.
Right.
So then nobody puts pepperoni. But then you'll have two people at the table that put the same obscure, weird thing that nobody thought. That's where some of the fun comes in. And by the way, another small box game and not expensive, like hours of entertainment and not expensive at all.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. Jamey, thanks for spending time with us. By the way, if people want more from you, there's your YouTube channel, and I recommend they check it out. And the great thing, Jamey, that I love about your YouTube channel, you don't spend a lot of time talking about Stonemaier Games. You certainly do from time to time, but as somebody that just loves the hobby, as I think everybody can hear, you do these lists all the time of your top 5 or your top 10 games about X.
Yeah. I love talking about games, and I love tabletop games in general, and I love the conversations that emerge from them. So yeah, I talked about that on my YouTube channel, and I talk a lot about the things that I've learned about running a business on stonemeiergames.com if people want to check that out as well.
Yeah, and go to stonemeiergames.com and you'll also see all the love there. Yeah, I really do wish you liked what you did, Jamey. I feel bad you don't. It just seems that you like it at all. Jamey Stegmaier, thanks for hanging out in the basement with us, talking board games. I appreciate it, and happy holidays to you, my friend.
Same to you. Thanks for your time.